Camera, check. Camera 2, check. Sound, check. Mateti, check. Slivovitz, check. Saxophone, check. Hi friends, welcome to my beautiful little car wash here in Docel, Belgrade, Serbia. Today is Easter Sunday in the Serbian Orthodox tradition, so I got my Sunday best on for you. And yeah, we're in lockdown, so it's very quiet. You hear the birds singing, so there's some nice things. I'm not going to say too much about that. But I'd like to present today a lecture which I had planned to give in the coming months, but will not be doing that. So I thought, well, why not use the time and film it. So I'm a bit of a one-man show. I'm just going to do my best to present this today. Some ideas, some music, some thoughts that are very, very dear to me, close to my heart, ones that I really love to teach, ones that I've been working on quite a bit over the years. It's still a work in progress. And I've got these instruments with me. Usually I do this with saxophone groups. Today I'm going to use the musical part. I'm going to maybe focus on these monochords. And yeah, welcome. So I've got my little beamer up there, and as you can see, the title of this little lecture I called Love and Numbers. I'll come to that later, why I call it that. Ancient harmonic knowledge. It's not as complex as it sounds. Modern applications, because I'm a musician and I very much use this information. Modern applications, what else was it? Oh yeah, and the sound of the Fibonacci sequence, something else that's very close to me. But before we get to that, which is the last part of the lecture, it's very important that we start to get a good feeling for the real essence of sound. And this work is really, in a way, number, the essence of number, which comes alive in sound. Now, I was never very good at maths at school, and I often wished that some of this information would have been available to me earlier. Doesn't matter, it's better late than never. And you can look at this stuff in two ways. Musicians can take stuff from it because I'm very interested in intonation, how we tune the notes. I believe that to be a really vital part of the music making, and a part that's often left out in some of the teachings at our schools. The other side of it is more the metaphysical, spiritual side, the symbolism of the numbers. And I understand that there are some people, musicians, that are not really interested in that kind of stuff. That's okay. But along the way, I give both sides as we go. And what I do in this talk or lecture is I slowly go up the number row, the harmonic series. And with each number, I just give you time to hear it, to play it. Although the only person here at the moment is, you know, my dog, who, by the way, likes music. Yeah, her name's Luna. To experience that as we go up. Once we've done that, once we've got a good understanding, usually I go up to the first 16 harmonics, then we can start to play around with sequences like the Fibonacci sequence and start to understand why it sounds like that. But first of all, we have to understand what's the sound of 1, what's the sound of 2, 2-ness, 3-ness, 4-ness, 5-ness, and so on. So yeah, that's the title of the lecture. Yeah. Yeah. This kind of, all these ideas I developed in about 13 years of teaching in the beautiful village of Agios Lavrentios in Greece. How I miss it now. And we were basically a saxophone class exploring different things. We often played outside, which means at a certain point I realized we couldn't use music because it's too windy. And so we started to develop some ideas of sound exploration. And yeah, this is just a very dear place to me, and I just put that one up because it's one of the reasons I'm actually doing this. Yeah. I'm in Serbia, obviously. Fate, sudbina, as we say here. And this is a beautiful quote, quite a famous quote by Nikola Tesla. Ako želite da otkrijete tajne univerzuma, razmišljajte o njima kao energija, frekvencija I vibracija. Yeah? You guys might know this one as if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. I think it's a beautiful quote. I think Mr. Tesla, bless his soul, is just missing out one important concept or word. And nothing against him, that's okay. My old English teacher at New Plymouth Boys High School in New Zealand, Mr. Ryder, used to say, whatever you do, guys, don't state the obvious. So I'm not going to state it. You can come to that conclusion yourselves. Nevertheless, it's an important starting point for our journey because I happen to be someone that is interested in maybe understanding a little bit more about why we're here, what is this place, what are we doing on our good walk on this good earth. And this work, the sound work, has helped me, at least personally, to come a little bit closer, and I believe also some of my students and fellow musicians. I also believe that with the sound work, we can come close to understanding some of these universal concepts. And in this work, there are really two parts. There's these universal laws, sounds, which we work with and play with, and there is the stuff, the things that come from us, from man, yeah? These two rivers meet, and then depart and meet, and I'll come to that later. I promise I'll come to that later. Just another thing before we start is, throughout the music history, there's been kind of two rivers. There's been on one side these theoreticians and people that are working with the numbers, the arithmetic, and so on. There's been practical musicians like myself, because we just play songs. We're interested in playing like practical applications. So I've really tried, in my best way, with this work, to always bring it back to the actual playing or singing and so on. So yeah, every journey has to start somewhere. So I'm going to do some cut-ins. I'm going to do my best with my little slideshow and my instruments. I've got a monochord, kind of a koto, a second monochord, the tampura, my harmonium. And maybe I could start with just saying, okay, harmonics, yeah, what is that? Yeah. So let me just play a little bit for you. Yeah, just so on. So these higher sounds, which some of you who have never heard them before will say, oh, that's interesting, are harmonics. And in a short version, these are like higher sounds that relate in whole number proportions to the bass, to the fundamental, to the one, to my note I was singing, yeah? And this is a phenomena that's really essential to the nature of sound itself, yeah? And these whole numbers become very important. That's one way I could like play the harmonics. I can also show you just on a single string of the tampura, so you can start to hear them. I think at the beginning of the journey it's very important just to feel it first, and then slowly, bit by bit, start to understand some of the theory behind this. But I can tell you, for myself, much of this is still, and always will be, a mystery, a beautiful mystery. But we just listen to it and it sounds good, so yeah. So yeah, the journey has to start somewhere, and our particular journey is not going to start with 0. I'll come to that later. It's going to start with 1. And often when I do this with musicians often know, like, okay, the tuning note we often use is a 440. That's an A. Oh, I think so, there. An A. 440 is cool. That means 440 hertz or 440 vibrations per second. Yeah, Then I often ask the musicians, okay, cool, 440, cool. What is the one then? What note is the one? Oh, I don't know what note the one is. Well, I'll just tell you. It's a C, yeah? It's a low-pitched C, a little bit lower than my harmonium here, which is tuned to A440, yeah? So that one cycle per second, that one beat per second, gives us the musical note C. And in this work, we work with doubling. So the C's will always be 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and so on. This C, and we call this Hertz, we measure this in Hertz, named after a wonderful German Mr. Hertz, yeah? This is the name we give to this measurement of frequency. I like to play around with this because I speak German, aber richtig. And I just play around with his name, and I either take away the T, or I turn it into a little pretty heart, like that. Isn't that pretty, yeah? Why do I do that? Because Hertz, the German word, means heart, yeah? And the 60, this pulse, relates one-to-one with the resting human heartbeat. Okay, not everyone, like behind you there's a kafana, like when all the dudes are there, I'm sure some of their resting heart rates are a little bit more than that, but that's another question for another time, yeah. In short, the 60, as a measurement of time, we can trace it back to the ancient Mesopotamian civilization, what, 6,000 years ago or so, where the base 60 was used as a counting system. And I'm very interested in this. Why the second? Why the 60? Yeah? Why this? Yeah? 60 is a very useful unit because of the factors. It has, useful factors for counting. But it also relates to our body, So this note, this 1 pulse per second, is a very, very, very low C. That's the information for now. That's where we're going to start our journey, yeah? So today, when we go up, slowly up this row, I've pitched my instruments in C, the tampuras, the monochords, my harmonium. And so the C, musical C, will be our bass note, and that's the beginning of our journey. So what I'll do is, with each number, I'm just going to play a little bit, show you on the monochord, do some little cut-ins, yeah, and show you some of my little cool images, because I've had lots of time to mess around. For example, this little thing here. Yeah, I had lots of time, last few days, so I was just playing around with, this is the number 1 in different languages, from around the world. So top row, you've got like English, then you've got Babylonian, then you've got Sinhalese, Burmese. On the second row, you've got Javanese, Chinese, Sanskrit, and then don't forget the Druids. So we've got a bit of what do you call them? Runes, yeah. And then the next row, we've got like Greeks, don't forget the Greeks, Braille. Hey. What else is there? Ethiopian, love, beautiful, beautiful language. Urdu, and the bottom line is Korean, Mongolian, Tibetan, and then the actual note, which is a C, a low C. This isn't directly related to our work, but just who knows, maybe it just triggers something, and I was just having some fun drawing. So for each of the notes, I'm going to put those numbers up. So this is the 1. Let's have a listen to our 1. I'm just going to play it for you on the monochord. Now, when you're listening to this note, I'll show it to you very clearly. The string is vibrating as one whole, but it's also vibrating exactly in the middle, in 3s and in 4s and in 5s and so on. And these are the harmonics, yeah? This is how our journey will be proceeding. And it's rewarding just to even listen to a single note. So if I had my dear saxophone friends here, I often just get one guy just to play a note, just a low note, and listen into that note. It's called timbral listening. Because even in that note, once you start to really listen into it, like worlds of sound open up, and you start to be more attuned to these harmonics, yeah? This is a big part of this work. Huge part of this work is just the listening part. Just listening, yeah? Spend some time listening. So listen to this 1. So with the 1, we could call it monads, or the all, home, unity, oneness, the whole of wholes. For us musicians, it's the tonic, it's the fundamental, it's the home key. It contains the potential of all numbers, but unless it's acted upon by the following numbers, it remains ever motionless and unapparent. In my little musical universe, the one is flexible. Today we're in C, tomorrow it could be in D or E flat. There's absolutely no room for dogma here. Only openness, flexibility, and just, listening. Cool. Now I've listened to the one. I guess the next step would be two. Now, this is a very interesting step. Now, this is the beginning of the journey, and I can tell you, honestly, it's almost the hardest one for me to explain. It's probably the most mysterious. It's, for us, the most useful, because this step, what happens now, is, to be honest, it's just mind-blowing. Yeah. Now, the story goes, in my workshop in Greece, I called it the G string of Pythagoras, which is obviously an awesome title. Thanks. And Pythagoras is credited with, making these discoveries. We know pretty well that it's much older than him. He learned elsewhere. He traveled all around. But yeah, that's another story. And different stories go, like he just suddenly discovered, like when he did something special on the monochord, if it was a monochord, something very amazing happened, yeah? When he played the string in half, exactly in the middle, divided the string in half, he heard this interval. So two, dyad, duality. This is the first primal creative act. This is the beginning of multiplicity. For the Pythagoreans, this was the first sex number. It was even and female. We could think of two-ness. And for us musicians, this is the octave. Yeah? And the top note is vibrating twice as fast as the bottom note. Rhythmically, it would be like this: 1, 1. And the mind-blowing thing for him, or his predecessors and teachers, was that this most perfect division of the string into two gives us this most harmonic or harmonious interval. Yeah? An interval which is found all over the world, unlike the other intervals. An interval which is the very essence of the power of doubling or halving, yeah, in sound. An interval which anyone, child or adult, musician or non-musician, would recognize if it's in tune or not. An interval that becomes very important because it transposes or translates information. And later on, when I go very high in this overtone row, when I analyze intervals that are beyond our hearing range or below our hearing range, I use the octave, because the octave translates or transposes the information and keeps it intact. The second note is the same but different, or different but the same, yeah? It's a higher version of the same note, yeah? So this is a very, very powerful tool we have when we're talking about frequency and vibration, because, as we know, we see a certain amount of frequency, we hear a certain amount, but there's a lot of other stuff happening, yeah? The octave can help us to understand this. Now, the symbol I use for the octave is this one here. It's a very simple symbol. Circle, equilateral triangle with a circle in the middle. And the circle in the middle is exactly half the size of the outer circle. So this one in the middle could be the higher octave, yeah? Sometimes a little bit of contemplation of the symbols alongside the sound together can be a rewarding thing. Let's put it that way. So yeah, that's the octave. Now I'm going kind of fast now. If this was like a regular workshop, if I had all my mates here, which would be great, we could spend a bit of time just to hear it, sound it out, feel it, and then move on slowly. Okay? Cool. Yeah, we've got the two numbers there. Okay, that's cool. Same thing. It's not really vital for our work. Then we come to the three. The three. Let me just play that for you on the monochord. When we get to the 3, we get to, well, it could be Trinity, threeness. And something very beautiful happens in the row at this point. So, in my spare time, I do a bit of magic, you know. What else am I going to do here in Serbia? Like, you know, lockdown, Corona. So I'm just going to demonstrate you the 3 in a different way. Here we go. Yeah. Now, it doesn't matter if I said freedom or freedom, you get the point. This interval is the quality of 3. It's an extremely important interval. Sometimes we use ratios to talk about these. So this is the 3 to the 2. Again, listen on the monochord, 3 to 2. Again, it's an interval that's common to all, I would say all music cultures, yeah? Shoot me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the case. It was the dominant interval in our Western musical culture for a long, long time before the other ones started to creep in new colors. It's a prime number, I believe, yeah? And I'll come to that, but all the prime numbers, once we encounter the prime numbers, always have a very special new quality, yeah? That's because the doubling, the octaves, for example, 1, 2, 4, 8, still have a very similar quality. And once we encounter numbers like 3 or 7 or 11, all of a sudden something very new and fresh happens in the row. So yeah, the 3, cool. Here's all the numbers for the 3. Oh yeah, funny little thing. I mean, I showed you the circle inside the triangle of this. This is the 3-dimensional version of that. A ball inside a pyramid, inside another ball, and that ball in the middle is a third of the size of the outer ball. So that's another visualization that can help you to imagine this, like 1 to 3 or 2 to 3, which is in music they call it the 5th, yeah. And I can tell you it takes a lot of time actually for musicians to really like lock into their 5ths, you know, to really just get them really nicely. A cappella choirs often do it, string quartets do it if they play a lot together, but a lot of other musicians do not. Our piano 5th is slightly out by 2 cents. Sometimes I'll use cents to talk about these intervals. There's 1,200 cents in an octave. It's how we divide the intervals. And I always say this, in this work I'm doing right now, there's a lot of cents, but there's no dollars. It's quite funny, isn't it? Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. Anyway, now we're going up to number 4. There's all the numbers for you. Babylonian one's quite nice, isn't it? Quite nice, yeah. Yeah, it's a C again. Let's listen to the sound of it in the monochord. Cool. As a symbol, the square, you know, man, you know. I've left away the head because I'm not really much of an artist, but I did put a moon up the top in that circle, and that's not just for no reason at all. Probably come back to that. But this little symbol, which I think could represent the 4, what we sort of tetrad, you know, 4-ness, you know. The 1 returns. It's kind of reconciling like 2 forms of mathematical growth, you know, the plus and the 2 plus 2 is 4, and 2 times 2 is 4. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in that one. And yeah, let's move on to the 5. We've got the numbers for the 5, yeah. Now, 5 is again a prime number, and 5 has a very, very special quality. Let's have a listen to that on the monochord. In music, we call this the major 3rd, yeah. As I mentioned before, it took a long, long time of our Western musical history for this interval to creep in and find a place. We know it now very well. It's tuning on the piano. It's quite high. If I sing it, that's the note. I'm actually singing overtone 10 now, it doesn't matter, because of the doubling we know that's 5. Just the quality of the third, the major third. Yeah. Pentad, yeah, what else can I say about that? Yeah, do you have any pictures for it? Yeah, this little pentagram is a very nice one. This becomes important later on with the Fibonacci work. It's full, it's loaded with this beautiful thing called the golden section, which we'll come to later. It's just a simple, nice shape for the 5. Cool. Let's just keep going. And we'll get up to the 6, hexad or sixness. And this interval we know already as the 3 in an earlier form. The 3, or the musical 5th, doubles to become the 6th. Yeah. Let's have a listen on the monochord. Yeah. And for the 6, I drew a little. I'm a big fan of bees. You know, I like bees a lot. Little beehive thing there. My drawing isn't the best, but you can also see there's something very circular about the 6th as well. So if you have like a glass, you can put 6 glasses around it exactly, and they will touch each other. You know, that's the 2-dimensional space. In 3-dimensional space, with the ball, you can put 12 around the other, that will touch each other. Yeah. This idea of the circle is important with this 6. What else is it? Yeah, it's the sum and the product of the first 3 numbers. Yeah, again, it's our musical 12th. Let's have a listen to it for a little bit, and then we'll move on. Okay, cool. Nice, now we come to number 7, and I believe 7 is also a prime number. Very beautiful note, really nice note. Let's have a listen to it. So the heptad, 7ness. It's often called the virgin of the decade, of the first 10 numbers. Why the virgin? Because it neither generates nor is generated. Yeah? It can't be multiplied to produce another one of these first numbers in the decade, and it also is not the product of any of the numbers. Yeah? So it's quite unique, this one. Yeah? Has a lot of symbolism to it, and beautiful sound. Here's a little thing I put together. Those are the 7 visible planets and spheres of the ancient world. Yeah, going around, you've got like the sun at the top, and then Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Moon, Mercury. And these also relates to the days of the week. In our musical world, it's the dominant 7th. It's very low, it's much lower than the piano. And it has a kind of sound of being at rest. Indeed, all of these intervals, these natural intervals, really come over as at rest. New qualities, but a little bit less tension in them than our well-tempered system. And I'm really glossing over this very, very quickly, but I always say, like, there's nothing bad about our system, our like even division of the notes, nothing bad at all. In fact, there's some very good things in it. But it's still good to go back and just really feel and understand these intervals in their natural form. I'll just sing the 7 for you. That's the one. Yeah. So yeah, that's a 7. Very nice. Okay, moving on. We've got the 8 here, one of our little numbers. Yeah. So the 8 we could call the octad. Yeah. It's the first cubic number, 2 times 2 times 2, standing for the cube with its 8 vertices. It's kind of a symbol of the element earth. We know from our work that the 8 is the same as the 1, the 2, the 4. So it's the octave repeating in a higher form. Let's have a listen to it. And as a little symbol, I've just put up the I Ching, or the Book of Changes. It's just a nice way to talk about the 8, or to imagine the 8, as we listen to it. So we come to 9, the Ennead. Connected to completion and limit, because it terminates decade for us, because up to 9 we have 10, which is like 1 and 0 together. Nikola Tesla's favorite number, I believe. Very, very beautiful overtone. I'm singing 8, 9, 8, 9, 8, 9, and this is the what we call in music the whole tone. And top of that, we've got this beautiful little turtle, the Lu Shu square, an old Chinese divination turtle, with the just an arrangement of 1 to 9, and all the rows and columns add up to 15. Number of days in the 24 cycles of the Chinese solar year. And of course you got this little baby here. It's a beautiful Indian mandala, 9 times 9 squares, symbolizing what else? The universe. Let's just listen a little bit to that interval on the monochord. Yeah, and so as we all know, 9 is a wonderful number, full of mystery, but it's not a prime number. It is 3 times 3, yeah? When we multiply by 3, we raise the interval with the quality of a fifth. When we multiply by 2, it's like an octavizing, yeah? By 3 is like the fifth. So 3 times 3, 3 was our musical fifth. It's the fifth of the fifth, yeah? If I can just like demonstrate that for you, like the sound of that. The 1, the 3, and then the 9. Yeah? So it's interesting, but it's not a completely new quality. It's not a prime number. Just keep that in mind. Cool, nice. Just moving to the 10. 10, as we know, is 5 times 2. Yeah, so it's the same as the 5. It's the third. Let's just hear it. I'll sing it. I'm singing 8, 9, 10, 10, 10, 10. And because I really couldn't find any cool images for the 10, and I'm like in lockdown in Serbia, I made up my own 10 commandments. Why not? And they are, thou shalt listen, thou shalt play with thy heart, thou shalt never stop learning, thou shalt know that the music is greater than thee, thou shalt know how to play in tune with all things, thou shalt be humble, thou shalt sing to thy children, thou shalt know that verily we are one, thou shalt carry music in thy heart until thy final breath, and thou shalt listen again. Bit of fun. Hey, what are we going to do? All by myself here. Now we come to number 11, one of my personal favorites. Beautiful thing. I call this one the primordial blue note. It's the first overtone that's actually, or first harmonic that's almost exactly a quarter tone, or in between a semitone. 49 cents out. And it sounds like this. conventional music would probably call it a tritone, but it has a very different quality. That's the kind of blues note quality of it. That's why I consider it this, like, you know, in German we say Ur blues note, original bluesy. It's also the gateway into the world of Makam. And I can only just touch on that very briefly, but because that particular note, that quarter tone, opens up a door into the world of Arabian Makam, the tetrachords, with this one note that's like in between, and this is the 11th overtone. Very, very beautiful note. Yeah, let's just go on. I'm running out of tape here. Let's go to number 12. For the 12, yeah, I have quite an interesting image up there, which you're going to think, what's going on here? Just going to talk a little bit about another part of my work. And the internet's very nice for certain things. And I discovered some years ago a person who's been doing some incredible work with the human biofield. Her name is Eileen McCusick, yeah? And she's developed a beautiful method. She's written a book. She's a wonderful teacher. And she's been working with tuning forks, basically, for I think a few decades, and experimenting with the effect of these tuning forks and sound around the body. And probably sounds a little bit strange to musicians at first, that you can, with these tuning forks, pick up and understand certain information around the body. And not just I can do that, but if you, my dear friends, my non-present students, were sitting here on that chair, and I was activating certain tuning forks, not this one, but some other ones, and not just myself, but also you, would be able to hear some differences when I come into contact with your biofield and get closer to you. So, long story short, I'll put a link down the bottom of this video. Eileen's been doing some fantastic work. It's been a huge inspiration for myself as a musician, looking for some, well, how can I say, other healing modalities or ways in which sound, well, can help us, basically. So one of the things Eileen developed is this thing called the sonic slider. And this one is like a weighted tuning fork. I'm not sure if you can hear it if I put it next to my mic here. If you can hear that. Yeah. This is 93.96 hertz, which doesn't mean much, yeah? What it does mean to us, and because of the 12th harmonic, this is the 12th harmonic of something called the Schumann resonance. The Schumann resonance is like a standing wave around the Earth, which is created because of the distance between the Earth and our ionosphere. I think set in motion by lightning discharges, so it's like electromagnetic waves. And this has been measured by Mr. Schumann at around 7.83 hertz. Yeah? This tuning fork is the 12th harmonic of that particular phenomenon. Yeah? Why is that important? Well, it's also important for me because I don't have time now, but there's some brain waves, we have some brain activity around that frequency, 7.83, which we would call alpha or theta. This is a brainwave activity when we're in deep relaxation, when we're perhaps meditating, or the moment, which is particularly interesting for me, but just before we fall asleep, just before that, between the waking and the sleeping state, which is a very, very powerful moment for suggestion and so on. So this standing wave around the Earth mirrors that particular brainwave. Now this is the 12th harmonic of that. Yeah? So what does that mean? This means that this fork was developed by Eileen to actually apply directly to the body. I can put it on my body, and when I do, you probably can't hear it now, but I really feel that strong vibration in my bones and wherever you want to do it. Yeah. But because of our knowledge now, I know if this is the 12th harmonic, well then I could sing the 1. Yeah, I could sing the 12th, it's like the 5th, so this one is the ooh, da, da, da. This is the 12th, and I'm going to go down to the 8th, which is the same as the 4 and the 2 and the 1. Yeah. So a very powerful thing for me would be to invoke this Schumann frequency, or this 7.83 hertz, with my voice, because I know when I put this on here, and together that makes this beautiful perfect musical fifth, the 2 to 3 relationship, yeah. In this case, the 12 to the 8, yeah, yeah. Now, if we really want to go hardcore, I could also like drop in a mantra. Here's one. So I'm just using like this low kind of harmonic singing. I'm singing the root note. This beautiful tuning fork is making the 12th, yeah? Just as an example of how could I use the 12th harmonic, yeah? Here we go. So my root note there was the Schumann frequency, albeit octavized. Doesn't matter though, it's still the same information, it's just in my particular range. So Eileen has lots of different tuning forks. And one phenomenon I cannot demonstrate here is the phenomenon of difference tones. Usually when we have saxophone players, I can do that. I have one saxophone player here, another one here. They play 2 notes together, and we hear a 3rd note. This is called a difference tone. Some people call it binaural beats or whatever. It's quite easy, actually. I have a very simple formula for this. This harmonic minus this harmonic gives us this 3rd note, which we hear, which I sadly cannot play for you because I'm all by myself. Yeah. But the formula is quite simple. This frequency minus this frequency gives us this 3rd note which we hear. And this is a very good tool for practicing the intonation in the series. And as far as I know, as best I can explain, it's to do with the non-linearity, because our ears are not the whole thing inside, of the ear. It's a beautiful phenomenon, but for example, I can maybe demonstrate with these 2 little guys here. She's got 2 tuning forks. One of them is 62.64 hertz, sounds like this. You can hear that. And the other one is 54.1 hertz, sounds like this. Oops. This one minus this one gives me 8.3 hertz. Now, I'm not sure if this will work, but when I put these 2 together, yeah, you feel a very strong 8 hertz. I'll do it on the other mic just in case. Now this is what some people probably know as a binaural beat, a very low frequency around this very interesting range I mentioned before. The difference is these little guys here are reacting with my body and with my biofield. It's not just putting on headphones, you know, which just like put something in. These things are also reacting to me. It's like a dance in between, yeah? And this is a big difference. This is why this work is very beautiful, and this is just a little thing I wanted to mention during the 12th harmonic. Okay, great. 13th harmonic, awesome. One of my favorite numbers. This one opens up the whole world of Fibonacci. It's an incredible, beautiful sound. I've got my little Metron's cube up there, 13 circles, from which you can make all kinds of wonderful creations, yeah. This note, it's kind of like a 6th in music, we would say. It's in between a major and a minor 6th. It's personally for me very special because when I grew up, the 6th was my favorite interval. When we were young, we would always learn them with songs, and this one was like, my Bonnie lies over the ocean, and my there was something about that interval that did it for me. There was something about that interval. And so when I discovered this overtone, something really came alight. I'm not sure if I can sing it so well. It's a bit high, but we'll see. You can hear it a bit. I'll just put in some saxophones for you to hear that a little bit. Yeah. So that's really, that's in the middle, and that's, yeah, probably get to it now in the Fibonacci part, but that becomes quite an important one. That's kind of the gateway into the Fibonacci spirals. Okay, I probably got to go fast now, like I'm losing the time, right? 14, Yeah, for the 14 is the same as the 7. It's the dominant 7th in music. It's not really a new quality as such. I just put in, just put in this slide here because I find the singing part of this work very important. So this is the Indian sargam or the Indian solfege, and I use this for the bass, for singing the bass notes. And I purposely put into this work like very, very simple songs so that my esteemed students can really practice feeling the root notes. So last week I uploaded a video with 12 songs for my grandmothers. I just recorded them there. And more than that, it was also spiritual and gospel songs that I've collected over the years that have a very, very simple 1-4-5-1 movement in the bass. Yeah. So if I was going to sing this scale here, and you can see I have the note names. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa. I have the note names, I have the frequency relationships, and I have the regular note names on the right. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni. This is the 14th harmonic, the dominant 7th. Sa, ni, 14th harmonic, sa. I really just wanted to put in everything I could in a short space of time, but I put a great amount of importance on slowing this down and finding like some good resonant syllables to articulate the tones, and these ones are very old, so they must be good, right? Yeah, no, they just have a good resonance to these sounds. Okay, cool. So moving on to the 15. The 15 is just before we finish the series, and before I do that, just mention again, the 15 is not a prime number. 15 is, as far as I can remember, 5 times 3, or 3 times 5, yeah? So if we take the third harmonic, which was our musical 5th, yeah? And times that by 5, yeah? If we multiply by 5, we're also bringing the quality of the 3rd, or multiplying the quality of the 3rd. So it's like the 3rd, or the major 3rd of the 5th. And excuse me if I just can't explain that now properly, but I'll just play it for you quickly. Here's the, the 1. Here's the 3. And here's the 15. And here the 15 is the major 3rd of the 3. Yeah? In other words, it's not a completely new quality. Yeah? It's the major 7th in music. And it forms a perfect or a well-intonated major 3rd to the 5th. Have a little pattern up here of the overtone series. There are many beautiful patterns within it. Here you can see the octaves, the 1, the 2, the 4, and so on. Now, the number before the octave tells you how many new notes will come in the next octave. So for example, the 3, just below the 4, tells us in the next octave there'll be 3 new notes, and there are 5, 6, and 7. The 7 before the 8 tells us there'll be 7 new notes in the next octave, and you can count them, there are. Just as one of the beautiful patterns. I'm not sure if I'll have time to do this, but these are, for example, prime numbered overtones, which we've been talking about up here. So I could play a little bit the monochord and play these notes and listen how to every note has a very, very new quality. Now, oh yeah, and I forgot to say one quite important thing. As the overtone row gets higher and higher, the distances between the notes decrease and get smaller and smaller. But there are some notes that never repeat, ever. And sometimes I ask my students, which one is it? Well, I can tell you. There's one important note which I just sung with the sargam, which never, ever comes, no matter how high up you go. And that note is, well, I'll just tell you now, it's the musical 4th, it's the sa, ma, that note here, ma, In our system, it's the 4 to 3 relationship. Yeah. And here we have a very, very interesting point. For those of you who are mathematically inclined, knock yourselves out with that. Good luck. But basically, it's quite simple. I mean, our root notes, 1, 2, 4, tonics, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so on, none of them are divisible by 3. So this particular interval can never happen. Yeah. This is where man comes into the equation. We infuse the row with this note. That note there, ha. This is, well, it's the best I can explain it. This is what man does. This is our contribution maybe to the harmonic series when it converges with music on this planet, yeah? That's just an interesting point. A series that just goes up and up ad infinitum, but never ever touches that particular note. Yeah? A note which is in our music very important. It's like the new one, works as the new one. So yeah, before I stop blathering on, I should probably come to a conclusion. I mean, usually at this point, I mean, we would have saxophones, or the group of us together, like play the overtones, or perhaps we could listen to that. I can just record it. If we just moved up the series so far, we've come pretty much from 1 to 16. We can't always play the bass note, but we can have a try. Maybe with the monochords. So if we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, So yeah, that was the sound of those. Of course, I realized I've forgotten so much in this short space of time. I also saw my little drums here. I was going to like cleverly use these drums to demonstrate some of the rhythmic relationships. For example, the fifth, the 2 to 3. So like we got the 2. 3 on this hand, 2 on this hand. But hey, I also forgot so much stuff. It doesn't matter. That was my little attempt to put my lecture, the first part of the lecture, in like a small space of time. And now we can move on to the sound of a sequence like the Fibonacci sequence. Hey guys, so just a real quick tour here. So you see the whole setup. I'm down to one camera, but good news is you get like, you know, tour of the neighborhood. Cool. I'm just going to sit here from the back, grab my mic, and project my little images up there, and give you the true sound of the Fibonacci sequence. Hi there. So now we come to the sound of the Fibonacci sequence. And this story goes back again to, I guess, Laurentius. Once upon a time, and a very beautiful time it was, 2011 to be precise, I was experimenting with my dear students with different number combinations and patterns in the harmonic series. Now that we have, a good understanding for the sound of the individual numbers, the 3ness, the 4ness, the 5ness, the 6ness, we can start to play around a little bit. For example, we could say, okay, what do the even numbers sound like? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. That has a specific sound. What do the odd numbers sound like? 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, and so on. And we were just, playing around, and then something very special happened. I'll never forget that moment. When just for fun I said, well, let's try out this Fibonacci sequence, this number pattern. Now, some of you have probably heard of this. It's named after an Italian mathematician from the 13th century. Oops. No, I could actually draw better than that. Here we go. Here he is. But again, a little bit like Pythagoras, we credit it to him, but it was already described much, much earlier. I think we've got records of this in a couple of centuries, BC, by Indian mathematicians who were actually enumerating possible combinations of Sanskrit poetry. So it did exist before that, that's for sure. So what is the sequence? As with the numbers in the harmonic series, these numbers reveal a certain quality of growth. Only here, each number is adding to the preceding one to produce the next one. So we've got 1, 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 2 is 5, 5 plus 8 is 13, and so on. And in this way, it contains a very different form of growth than the harmonic series, which extends and contracts with neighboring whole numbers. This Fibonacci series is found throughout nature on the micro and the macro level. It has an incredible amount of applications. You can see it, find it in cauliflowers, find it in spiral galaxies. And the higher we go up the series, the closer we approach what is sometimes called the golden section. This you can see because on the right I've got the ratios of the tones. But first of all, let's just listen to, my epiphany, what happened. And this was a really big moment when we tried to play the sound of this sequence. So we just had a 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. And right there, that moment for me was something very, very special when I realized, wow, something very, very interesting is happening here when in sound two very different, very powerful, very seemingly universal growth principles are kissing somehow, connecting, and the sound is, as a musician I can say it's very beautiful, it's very interesting, and right away I was hooked, and still am. Now, this golden section, or sometimes called golden proportion, divine ratio, sectio aurea, or phi, is an irrational number, and so as we're going up, these ratios, or in our world, these intervals between the adjacent notes, are approaching this particular ratio, converging on it. It's best described as on a section of line where the smaller to the greater section is equivalent to the greater to the whole, and the best way for me to show you that is on the monochord, because then you can really see and feel the sound of this golden proportion, or sometimes described as self-similarity. So the shorter section to the longer section, as the longer is to the whole. Shorter to the longer to the whole. longer to the shorter. And not long after I returned from my workshop in Greece in 2011, I was sitting in Berlin in a little cafe, and I just saw this little tiny flyer postcard next to me. And that was also another mind-blowing moment. And on it, you can see there was it says 100 youths from Neukölln and Rotterdam sing and dance the Fibonacci numbers. I was like, whoa. And on that little card, you can see up the top, the first 32 Fibonacci numbers, right up to 2,178,309, were listed. And so I decided to use these 32 numbers and make a piece out of it, which I then called Love in Numbers. And during this time, I was, sketching little Fibonacci spirals to sort of internalize for myself this growth series. Starting again like with a 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and then connecting these and making these little, spirals and filling up my little notebooks and having lots of fun. And it struck me that this growth spiral exists as we perceive it in 3 dimensions. But even this could be an expression of an order from a higher dimension. And I recalled a book of Rudolf Steiner I'd read some time ago, in which he unfolded the cube onto 2-dimensional paper in order to explain and facilitate a dimensional shift in our understanding, and then proceeded with a 4-dimensional figure called a tesseract, which unfolded to the cube as we know it. And I wouldn't be surprised if such a potent and all-encompassing creative force like the Fibonacci growth spiral is an expression of a creative model from a higher order of spatial construct, which simply requires a jump in our thinking to grasp, even if it's only in theory. And I think perhaps the sound work can bring us a step closer to understanding in the way that Mr. Tesla explained it in his quote I used at the start of the lecture. And so I was interested, how do these intervals behave when we're going up the row like this? And we heard that now with the 1, 1, the 2, the 3, and then 3 to the 5 and to the 8. And then we have these kind of sixths, these beautiful sixths. And I mentioned how much I loved them anyway. That really fascinated me. And as the series converges on this beautiful irrational number, so too do the intervals. These intervals are changing very, very slightly the higher up we go. And they're slowly approaching a very specific interval that became very important for me, because it gave me a real feeling of cadence or arrival on the top note. I heard it more as an inverted major third, with the tonic being on the top, and the major third being 33 cents too low, which is also a beautiful number, by the way. So this is the real Fibonacci interval in the form that it's approaching as it goes up, the eternal row. Now on my worksheet for the piece, Love and Numbers, you can see I've analyzed these first 32 Fibonacci numbers, and I'm going way, way beyond the hearing range of humans, but I'm using the power of the octave, as I mentioned in the first part, this incredible power to translate and transpose information. So I'm transposing by the end almost 21 octaves back down into my hearing range, because I still know that the intervals I'm analyzing are exactly intact. And the spiral itself, the row, does it spin out into space without ever repeating a note? I asked myself. And I'd calculated the first 300 Fibonacci numbers and checked their factors. And none of the numbers are divisible by 5 or 10 or 20 or 40 or 80 or 160, meaning that my fifth harmonic, which is in my piece, this lowered E, never reoccurs. And so I can pretty much deduce that the spiral spreads out into infinity without ever repeating a single note in any octave. And I'm still coming to terms with that concept. And I could go on and on. There's, even within the Fibonacci sequence, incredible reoccurring patterns that are simply mind-blowing. But For reasons of brevity, I'm just going to play for you just the first page of my piece, Love and Numbers. And why did I call that? Well, simply when I went into this number work and started to do some of this analysis, I discovered clearly certain forces or things that for me can only be described by that word, hence the title. So this is just the first page, and you'll see the Fibonacci numbers I'm playing, and just listen to the chords. Simple as that. And that, my dear friends, is the sound of the Fibonacci sequence, played by saxophones. Surely not as accurate as a computer or a sine wave generator, but in this particular creative act of bringing a universal principle down to earth, so to speak, empowered by the human breath, I believe it to be infinitely more potent. So I want to thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed today's little talk. Like I said, I've missed out so many things. I went through pretty quickly just to give you an overview. Who knows how long this thing will go on for. Maybe I'll just do another one at some point. If any of these little explorations of mine have inspired you to continue this work and to delve into it a little bit more on your own, I would be a happy man indeed. I believe these things to be beautiful secrets in plain sight or plain earshot. In that sense, verily, the kingdom of heaven is right in front of us.